Consoles, the one and only official video game podcast of Culture Bop. I am here this week as a sort of special episode. I don't know what you want to call this, but yeah. We couldn't get together this week, and I'm frankly a little tired of skipping weeks for you guys. If I can just be honest, so I figured I would do a solo one, but also given that we are currently sitting in the middle of October, and we haven't even remotely started discussing horror-related anything, I thought it would actually be a good time to kind of sit and talk about some horror-related stuff. So I'm actually going to release 3 supplemental episodes. These should right at the last of the month. That will kind of go in tandem with our episodes that we will be creating, as we kind of go along. And what the plan is for me is to kind of talk to you about some horror related stuff. So that's what we will be doing. Today, this is I'm going to kind of run this like a normal episode, just because there are a couple of things that I have really genuinely wanted to talk about, and I don't want to wait too much before I kind of get into them. So what we will do first and foremost is we will kind of go through what I've been doing the last couple of weeks. Well, not weeks, but past couple of days. So that said, let me talk to you guys a little bit about a couple of movies that I've watched. I watched a new movie on Hulu called No One Will Save You. This is a movie that came out just a couple of weeks ago, I believe, and it's a sort of alien invasion thriller type horror movie, starring what is her name? Caitlin Dever, I think is her name. She was one of the leads of Booksmart, which is a great movie that you should definitely check out if you have not. But she is the lead, and it basically kind of just follows her around as she is, experiencing this alien invasion. I don't feel like there have been a whole lot of alien invasion movies that have worked really all that well in a while. A lot of them tend to be stuff like, I think, what was that Mila Jovovich movie? I think it was called The Fourth Kind. Let me see. Yes, it was. It was called The Fourth Kind. Which was kind of like a weird hybrid documentary thing, if I'm remembering correctly. And what was the other one with Kerry Russell? I don't know. I can't remember. But basically, there haven't been a whole lot of alien invasion movies that have really worked for me in a while that weren't explicitly like disaster films. Like I like I've come around on, I should say, the Spielberg remake of War of the Worlds, and like it's good, but it's much more action than it is horror, I think. And it's very hard to find good alien invasion horror movies, I feel like, at least in the modern day. But this one is pretty cool. I really like this movie because the aliens aren't just kind of like I think with a lot of modern alien movies, you run into a situation where you run into like a Cloverfield, where they're much more like monstrous and like a lot less sentient. Feel like a lot less like human focused, or that's a poor phrasing, but like smart, I guess. And this is very much like a bunch of smart aliens trying to take over the world, and um, they're here to kind of like fuck shit up, for lack of a better phrase. And I really enjoyed that aspect of it. I also really like the movie is more or less a silent film in regards to like dialogue. Like there isn't a whole lot of dialogue in here, and it's really kind of one character. Pretty much the entire movie. There's a few like there are other characters, but like no one gets screen time quite the same way as Caitlin Dever. And I liked the idea of the sort of silent aspect of it. I really thought that was kind of cool for a little while, but then it kind of became a little annoying towards the end of the movie, because I feel like I do like the idea of she doesn't have anyone to talk to, so why would she say anything type deal, you know? Like you it makes sense, but also it kind of doesn't make sense in a lot of ways. Like I feel like if I were noticing some things, running towards me, or any of the situations that she's maybe put in throughout the movie, I feel like I would say something like "oh shit," "oh fuck," or something like that. Even if it's just an exclamation, because that's what's happening in my head. So it works, I feel like, until it doesn't. And I also kind of feel like this movie suffers a little bit from the use of having the antagonist or monster, or in this case alien, having them there to kind of help the protagonist overcome trauma. I feel like that stuff is getting a little bit old. I've seen it like a billion times before. That just seems to be what horror is nowadays, and I really kind of wish that like it would kind of go away just a little bit. Like not every movie needs to be about like some trauma that our protagonist is overcoming. That said, I really, really think that Caitlin Dever's performance is phenomenal. I really like the aliens, and I really, really love the implications of what's going on at the end of the movie. I don't want to spoil anything, but it's kind of a go for broke type ending, and I really, really dug that. I think those sorts of positives outweigh the negatives, and it makes for a relatively enjoyable experience. So I definitely recommend No One Will Save You on Hulu. One movie that I do not recommend is a movie called Pet Sematary Bloodlines. This is a prequel to Pet Sematary, obviously. And it follows the character of Judd, I believe is his name. Yes, Judd. He is the old guy played by Herman Munster in the original Pet Sematary, and I believe in the remake it was what is his name from Third Rock from the Sun and Dexter. I'm blanking on his name. Anyway, so this movie is supposed to kind of like give us some insight into what's happening in Ludlow, and also what is going on with his character before he ever meets the family in those original movies. And this movie really feels like one of those low budget efforts that's like trying really hard to punch above its weight. And it just can't overcome its limitations. I think that there's a lot of really cool stuff in the script that really is like almost refreshing, I feel like. It's not that it's necessarily anything new, because it's, I mean, honestly, it's very hard to come up with new things in horror. But like, there are things specifically in here that I was like, I really enjoyed the tying this world to Native American, sort of like, I don't want to say religion, but spirituality, tying it to that and having a sort of commentary on how we as people, not settlers or whatever you want to call them, colonizers, kind of had no respect for their ways of life. I really think there's a strong through line of commentary in here about that specifically. And there are a few really good things in the script other than that it kind of tries to tackle. But then it also has some of the worst lines of dialogue and some of the most predictable beats that like I've ever seen. Like I saw several things coming from like a mile away, and some of the lines were just like, why is this in the movie? Why didn't someone cut this out? The acting in this movie is actually kind of great in some in some scenes, and from scene to scene it varies wildly. Like the guy who plays Judd, for instance, I think there was like one scene in particular where I was like, okay, I can get behind this guy. He's been kind of whatever, but like this was a good scene. And then like the very next scene, he had like an expression on his face that I was just like, I don't think you're supposed to be reacting that way to this situation. Same thing with like the kind of like main antagonist of the movie. There was one scene in particular that I was just like, oh, he's actually very good. And then like the very next scene I was like, or maybe not. And I really like, it felt like that the entire way through the movie. Like there were a lot of really cool things to like about this movie, and they would get completely just like demolished by mediocre stuff immediately afterwards. I liked it, despite it being tied to an IP, that there was a little bit of originality, and that there was a little bit more originality than stuff that came out earlier this year that wasn't tied to IP. Like, I felt like there was more originality in this in places than the entirety of the Boogeyman from earlier this year. So it totally gets some bonus points for that. But I really think that this is one that you could probably skip. If you're looking for any sort of like horror movies to kind of like tide you over for the holiday, I think you can do better than Pet Sematary Bloodlines. Okay. Well, we'll leave it at that, and we'll get to the topic of this show, which I am here to give to you. So, I was actually posed this question the other day by our one and only Mr. Justin Ruiz. So, I can't remember where he said that he got where he got the prompt from, but he posed this question to me. Environmental storytelling is a key component in horror games. Can you share examples of how effective world building has enhanced the fear factor in horror titles? And I really thought that was a very interesting question for a number of reasons. Namely, because I do think that horror really benefits a lot from world building in ways that some other game genres don't necessarily do. Like I feel like there are what's the best way to put it? I feel like a lot of what happens with like action games or even adventure games like Uncharted is they just kind of rely on a bunch of the knowledge of the player of like already existing world around them, right? So I think that horror alongside like RPGs, like fantasy in specific, tend to need the world building done a little bit more than some other genres. And horror, I think, comes from that. Uses that to its benefit. So, and I wanted to kind of like, I guess, go over that question a little bit myself and kind of talk about one of my favorite examples of this. So, I think that Silent Hill as a series has really done a lot to create interesting worlds. At the very least, the original, like, kind of like trilogy of things. And I think that among those games, I feel like the obvious and most, like, how do I want to put this? The obvious and most prominent answer in this list would be Silent Hill 2. So I want to talk about that one first, and then I'll I'll throw out some examples of other ones. But Silent Hill 2, the reason that I think that game works so well is not because the horror is necessarily grounded in any sort of like what's the best way to put this? It's not grounded in any sort of like, I don't want to say realism because that's not the word that I'm really trying to say, but more so it's that there isn't a whole lot for you to necessarily grab onto and understand, if that makes sense. Like, it's not a very relatable situation, at least not for a lot of people, where the horror is like these monsters that kind of, represent things specific to the character involved, right? I think we can see this in horror movies in general, where like the monster is usually a metaphor for something else. Like in the Babadook, it's basically for the mental state of the mother, not loving her child and being in a depression after the death of her husband. So the monsters are obviously metaphors, but in this instance, the metaphors here are for really horrific things that I don't know that there are a lot of people who can kind of relate. So With that said, the reason that I think that it rules is because the narrative of the game delves deep into the psyche of James, the protagonist, and it's a lot about guilt, grief, and redemption, and a lot of the monsters in this game represent those things. Pyramid Head being like a very prominent version of that, right? With that said, I think that the world around James, like if you take James out of the equation, the world around Silent Hill 2 all adds to those themes and really, really makes the game operate in a way that is scarier than if it had generic like zombies, for instance. I really think that like when you look at the characters of Lisa's the big one, but I'm trying to remember the name of the brunette lady. I know Maria is the one who looks like his wife. What's the... Where are the... Oh my gosh. Okay, I can't seem to find her name. Well, anyway, every single one of the characters within the game really kind of emphasize the themes that are happening in the game. So with Angela, that I believe that is her name, Angela. Okay. With regards to these characters, you have these people who are working. I'm trying to think of the best way to put it. Their stories all have ties back to those themes of, of the like the guilt and the grief and the, whether or not you can be redeemed. Like with Angela, for instance, she's like suicidal, sorry. And she's supposed to be searching for her mother, but it's like, it's strongly implied that she was abused and raped by her father, and she killed her father, and that's why she's in Silent Hill. Kind of, again, similar to James in the story, where you kind of find out over the course of the game that he is in grief over basically killing his wife. I think that Maria is an interesting sort of like super sexualized manifestation of his wife, obviously. But like, I think that stuff that she has going on also emphasizes those themes. Eddie is if I'm not mistaken, he like killed someone in his high school or a football player or something like that. But like, he has this anger and this rage that he can't control, and in his final appearance, he's in like the labyrinth, which is where he confesses to murders. And his story is also kind of talking about his regret, or kind of like lack of, which ties back into James's overall story. And I really think that like those narrative elements mixed with the fact that like it's all foggy, so James kind of like he realizes what he's done, but he also kind of in the back of his mind has kind of forgotten that that's the way he was, you know, towards his wife near the end of her life. And I really feel like a lot of the metaphorical stuff happening in Silent Hill 2 really is portrayed through the world building, and that's what makes the game so fucking scary. It's not necessarily that, oh, there's this weird looking pyramid thing, you know, trying to kill me. It's more that that thing is a manifestation of James's psyche, that is a manifestation of his guilt and his regret, and how that kind of ties in with the horror of everything. He committed an atrocity, and now this pyramid head thing is going after him. And it just kind of makes it's a whole big psychological soup that like is just terrifying, I feel like. The atmosphere, the music, everything around Silent Hill 2 really adds to the compelling storytelling going on over there. And that's why I feel like Silent Hill 2 has one of the best instances of like world building, helping to amplify the horror of a situation. I really think that Resident Evil 2, especially the remake, has a lot of that stuff going on as well. And staying with the same franchise, Resident Evil 7's, I think, really adds to the horror as well. A lot of the stuff going on within the environment and learning, like, just for instance, like, so in Resident Evil 7, the Biohazard, you have these, for lack of a better term, backwoods antagonists. Like, they're these super scary people who aren't necessarily zombies. And that, I feel like, is a nice little like turn for the series as a whole, but like also having it set in Louisiana with these characters who aren't necessarily zombies, they aren't necessarily monsters per se, and knowing that they are the product of the corporate machinations of the Umbrella Corp kind of adds to the sense of tension, I feel like. Knowing that the game is focused around how the, for lack of a better term, I'm trying to figure out what I'm trying to say. Like, the malfeasance of corporate overlords, basically, is visited upon these people, and that's why they are the way they are. So it's like multiple layers of horror getting put on top of your story. And I feel like that's part of the reason that it makes 7 such a scary game. I think 7 is a real return to form. The games started, especially with 3, and then very much so with 4, 5, and 6, started taking turns towards action. Like, they just kind of dropped the horror aspect to a degree. And I think having it set in that location with those characters and the implications of the world around it, it really amplifies the scariness of 7 and makes it one of the scarier entries in the series. There are tons of others. Parasite Eve, having that set in New York and having, you know, the whole idea, the whole narrative setting around your cells literally being the things that can kill you is really good. Um, yeah, there's just a lot of really good stuff, and I really think that horror games need to lean into the world building a little bit more. Stuff that's done it recently with like really good, uh, I guess return. I don't know what way to describe it, but like Little Nightmares, I think is really great. Um, I really like Until Dawn. I'm not 100% sure that that's all world building, but like I think that's really good. Little Nightmares, like I said, System Shock. Well, that's actually kind of a older game, but yeah, just it's good stuff, really good stuff. So yeah, okay, cool. Um, I don't want to talk about what I've been playing because all I've been playing is Lies of P, and definitely want to kind of go over that with the guys because I think both of them have sort of been playing it at least a little bit. So I'm gonna hold off on that for now. But what I am going to do is offer up a pick of the week before I get out of here. And yeah, so my pick of the week is a little YouTube video called "The Simpsons is Good Again" by Super Eye Patch Wolf. This movie or this video goes over how the two newest seasons of The Simpsons aren't necessarily a return to form the way that they were for the original, roughly 10 seasons of the show, but it is a new and interesting look at what The Simpsons can be in 2023. And it kind of breaks down some of the better episodes to come out of these final two seasons and really just kind of like tells a really good story. So, great video. Love me some Super Eye Patch Wolf. And yeah, good stuff. Cool. So, as always, you can find us on social media for all things Culture Bop, Hunting Pixels, and the Culture Bop family of content. Culture Bop is available on Instagram at culture_bop. And I got a video coming, I promise. I just have to find the time to work on it. Life and work have been crazy, and I just have not had a chance to make it a thing. So, but it is coming, I promise. So, youtube.com/c/culturebop. If you want to follow me on Twitter, you can. The Bebop at the BebopMan182, and on Instagram, I am at BebopMan182. And lastly, if you're listening to this and you aren't already, go to patreon.com/culturebop. Toss us a pledge. Got some cool stuff going on over there. And yeah, so it helps us make this show happen. I think that's it. So until next time, goodbye.